Officer Ryan McAllister thought it was just another quiet winter patrol through the snow-covered streets of Elridge, until his canine partner Thor suddenly erupted in furious barking, blocking his path to the patrol car. The German Shepherd's eyes burned with panic, hackles raised, breath fogging in the icy air. Ryan frowned, confused. Thor never barked without reason. Then he heard it, a faint ticking beneath the chassis. When he knelt down and brushed away the snow, his blood ran cold. A homemade bomb, its red light blinking, counting down from 15 minutes. Who planted it? And why target him? A man who'd already lost his wife to an explosion years ago? As the blizzard thickened and the clock kept ticking, one loyal dog would make a choice that changed everything, and expose a cartel willing to kill anyone who stood in their way. What happened next will make you cry and believe that miracles still walk on four paws. Before we begin, tell me where you're watching from. Drop your country in the comments. I want to see how far the story of courage and faith travels. The winter wind of Elridge, Texas, cut like a knife through the empty streets, whistling between the steel ribs of the old industrial district. Snow had been falling since sundown, blanketing the city in a pale silence broken only by the hum of a single patrol car crawling along Barton Avenue. The headlights sliced through the haze, illuminating flakes that drifted like ash in the cold night. Inside the patrol car, Officer Ryan McAllister sat behind the wheel, his gloved hands loose on the steering wheel. 37 years old, tall, with a build hardened by years in the Marines before joining the Elridge Police Department, Ryan carried an air of steady composure. His short-cropped brown hair was streaked with silver at the temples, and his storm-gray eyes reflected the passing lights with quiet vigilance. He'd been on night patrols long enough to know that silence wasn't safety. It was warning. Beside him sat Thor, a 5-year-old German Shepherd with a sable and black coat and intelligent amber eyes. Thor had served 3 years as Ryan's canine partner, known throughout the department for his precision and unflinching loyalty. He was calm now, resting his head between his paws, but Ryan knew better than to mistake stillness for ease. The dog's instincts never slept. Ryan turned down the narrow street of Barton Alley, the kind of forgotten corner where crimes were buried beneath the snow. The faint glow of distant neon signs blinked like tired eyes, and the air smelled faintly of diesel and iron. "Another quiet night, huh?" Ryan muttered, reaching to adjust the heat. But Thor's head suddenly lifted, ears pricking. His body stiffened. Ryan noticed immediately. The change was subtle but unmistakable. Thor's nose twitched once, twice, then a low growl rumbled in his chest. Ryan slowed the car. "What do you smell, buddy?" he asked quietly. Ahead, between the shadows of 2 rusted dumpsters, a faint movement caught his eye. 3 silhouettes, hunched and hurried. One of them glanced over his shoulder, the reflection of a small metal case flashing briefly under the streetlight. Ryan's instincts kicked in. He switched off the headlights and the patrol car rolled forward on momentum alone. He radioed in. "Dispatch, this is Unit 12. Possible illegal exchange in progress, Barton Alley near the old rail yard. Requesting backup." The reply came through static. "Copy, Unit 12. Units in the area are tied up. Proceed with caution." Ryan reached for the door handle and looked at Thor. "Let's go to work." Snow crunched beneath his boots as he stepped out. Thor leaped down beside him, perfectly in sync, his paws sinking into the snow. The cold air bit at Ryan's face as he approached the alley, hand resting lightly near his holster. "Elridge Police," he called, voice echoing. "Show me your hands." The figures froze, then scattered. "Go!" Ryan barked, and Thor surged forward, a blur of fur and focus. Ryan sprinted after them, his breath fogging in the icy air. One suspect darted between crates, another jumped a fence, snow flying in his wake. Thor lunged toward the closest one, forcing him to swerve sharply into another alley. "Stop! Police!" Ryan shouted, slipping slightly as his boots hit a patch of ice. The sound of running feet echoed ahead. Then silence. He rounded the corner just in time to see a dark shape vault over a chain-link fence and disappear into the night. Thor reached the fence, barking furiously, snow spraying from his paws. Ryan caught up, heart pounding. He aimed his flashlight, but the beam only caught swirling snowflakes. The suspects were gone. Ryan knelt beside Thor, catching his breath. "Easy, boy. We'll get them next time." The dog stood panting, his breath clouding in the cold air, tail rigid with tension. They made their way back toward the patrol car, their footprints already filling with fresh snow. Ryan keyed his radio again. Unit 12. Suspects fled eastbound through Warehouse District. No contact. Returning to vehicle. Copy, Unit 12, came the dispatcher's calm reply. The streets were empty again, eerily so. Ryan's boots squeaked against the frozen slush as he approached the patrol car, parked beneath a flickering light. He rubbed his gloved hands together, feeling the sting of the cold through the fabric. Another dead end, he muttered to Thor, who padded silently beside him. But something in Thor's demeanor had changed. His steps slowed. His ears flattened, then shot upright again. The shepherd stopped entirely, nose to the air, and let out a sharp, anxious bark. Ryan frowned. What is it now? Thor barked again, louder, pulling against the leash toward the car. His hackles rose as he circled the front bumper, barking with growing urgency. Hey, calm down, Ryan said, confusion furrowing his brow. Thor's behavior was different from before. Not the aggressive bark of pursuit, but something else, more desperate, almost warning. He tried to step closer to the driver's door, but Thor lunged sideways, planting himself in Ryan's path. The dog's teeth were bared, his growl deep and continuous. Thor, easy, Ryan commanded, but the shepherd didn't move. He barked again, stepping between Ryan and the car door, eyes locked beneath the vehicle. Ryan froze. The air suddenly felt heavier, colder. He'd worked with Thor long enough to know this wasn't random. The dog never barked without cause. Not like this. Okay, what's going on? Ryan murmured, scanning the street. Everything was still, just wind, snow, and the steady sound of Thor's growling. For the first time that night, a faint unease crept up Ryan's spine. He backed away slightly, holding Thor's collar. All right, boy, we'll check it out in a second. But Thor didn't relax. He stayed between Ryan and the car, tail rigid, muscles quivering. His eyes never left the shadow under the chassis. Ryan hesitated, torn between instinct and curiosity. Something under there was wrong. He could feel it now, too. That strange pull of danger without a visible threat. But before he could move closer, the faint sound of a door opening made him glance up. Across the street, a warm yellow light spilled from the front window of a small cafe. The sign above the door, half buried in snow, read Bean Haven. Inside, a single figure had appeared, a woman standing near the counter, watching the commotion outside. Maya Collins, 31, was the cafe's owner, known in the neighborhood for keeping her shop open late to serve tired truckers and police officers. Once a veterinary student, she'd left a school after her father's sudden passing, inheriting the family cafe and running it ever since. Her dark hair was tied loosely back, and she wore a simple wool sweater under an apron, her breath fogging the glass as she peered out. From her window, Maya saw the patrol car's flashing lights reflecting off the snow, the shadow of an officer and his barking dog framed in the glow. Something about it unsettled her. She reached for her phone, hesitating before dialing. Should she call dispatch or trust that the officer knew what he was doing? Ryan noticed her silhouette and raised a hand briefly to signal her to stay inside. The woman nodded hesitantly, retreating from the window. He turned back to Thor, who had stopped barking but still stood rigid, ears twitching. Ryan bent down slowly, his breath steaming in the frigid air. "You smell something, don't you?" he whispered. The dog's tail flicked once in response. The night had grown so quiet that Ryan could hear the faint drip of melting snow from the eaves of the building beside him. Every instinct told him something about the car wasn't right, but the logical part of his mind pushed it aside. Maybe Thor had caught a scent from one of the suspects, maybe oil fumes, maybe anything. He straightened, scanning the alley once more. Snowflakes drifted across the street like white sparks, landing on the brim of his cap. "Let's head back, boy," he said, patting Thor's shoulder. The dog didn't move. "Fine," Ryan sighed, glancing at the faint glow of the cafe's window one last time before turning to his patrol car. "You win. We'll check it in a minute." Thor's low growl followed him through the cold. The snow kept falling, erasing every footprint they'd left behind. From a distance, the quiet alley looked peaceful again. Just a man, his dog, and a patrol car idling in the storm. But under the blanket of white and steel, something waited in silence, pulsing like a hidden heartbeat beneath the snow. Thor's growl deepened, a low, vibrating rumble that echoed through the alley. The wind cut between the buildings and snow whipped sideways, clinging to Ryan's jacket as he frowned and stepped closer to the car. "What is it, boy?" he muttered, his breath fogging in the freezing air. The shepherd barked again, short, sharp, urgent. Ryan crouched slightly, following the dog's gaze. That was when he heard it. Beep. Beep, beep. Faint, but distinct. The sound made his blood run cold. He grabbed his flashlight, knelt, and angled the beam beneath the patrol car. There, wedged to the steel frame and half covered by snow, was a black box wired with twisted copper strands. A small red light blinked steadily, a pulse of death against the metal. The digital timer read 00:14:59. For a split second, Ryan froze. His mind went blank. Then instinct snapped back. "Dispatch, this is Unit 12. I've got a live explosive device under my patrol car. Active timer, I repeat, active device. Barton Alley. Immediate bomb squad and evacuation." "Copy that, Unit 12," came the dispatcher's voice, suddenly taut. "All available units are rerouting. Stay clear of the vehicle." Ryan grabbed Thor's collar, pulling him back several yards. His heart thudded in rhythm with the timer's beeping. He scanned the empty alley. No movement, no headlights, just the whisper of falling snow. Whoever planted this was long gone. "Good boy," Ryan said softly, his voice steady but his pulse racing. "You saved us again." Thor whined low in his throat, eyes fixed on the bomb like he understood every word. Within minutes, sirens approached, muffled at first, then louder, bouncing off the brick walls. Red and blue lights bled through the snowfall as two patrol cars screeched to a halt at the mouth of the alley. Officers spilled out, forming a perimeter. One of them, a young cop named Tyler Briggs, barely 26, tall and lanky with a nervous energy, rushed toward him. "Jesus, Ryan," Tyler said, his breath coming out in clouds. "You sure it's live? You want to crawl under there and check?" Ryan shot back, eyes never leaving the blinking light. Tyler swallowed hard and shook his head. A moment later, the low growl of an approaching engine cut through the air. A matte black van pulled up, headlights dimmed. On its side, EOD, Explosive Ordnance Division. The door opened, and Sergeant Alan Pierce stepped out, moving with the deliberate calm of a man who had seen too many close calls. Pierce was in his mid-40s, barrel-chested, with the kind of square jaw that looked carved from stone. He wore a heavy bomb suit, its surface glistening with snow. His gray eyes flicked from Ryan to the vehicle. "Timer?" 14 minutes, give or take," Ryan replied. Pierce gave a low whistle. "Hell of a night." He signaled to his team. Two technicians unloaded the disarmament robot, its mechanical arm already whirring to life. "Everyone, back 50 feet," Pierce barked. The other officers complied, forming a half circle. Ryan pulled Thor back behind a nearby dumpster, keeping a line of sight on the car. The robot rolled forward, metal treads crunching against the snow. The faint beep, beep, beep of the timer seemed to grow louder. Ryan clenched his fists. He'd faced firefights in Afghanistan, but this was different. This was waiting for death that ticked. "Disruptor in place," Pierce said into his mic, his voice crackling through the static. His team crouched near the van, monitoring the feed from the robot's camera. The mechanical arm extended beneath the car, stopping inches from the device. A thin mist of snowflakes drifted between them. No one spoke. Even Thor had gone silent, muscles taut. Then, a soft pop. A moment later, Pierce exhaled and muttered, "Timer neutralized." The breath Ryan had been holding escaped in a rush. Around him, the officers relaxed visibly, a few muttering quiet curses of relief. Pierce's voice came through again. "We're good. She's dead." Ryan walked forward cautiously, Thor pacing at his side. Pierce met him halfway, cradling the sealed containment box that now held the bomb. "You got lucky tonight, officer," he said, removing his helmet. "Whoever built this wasn't your average psycho. Industrial-grade detonator, military wiring, P10 compound mixed with ammonium base. You step in that car, you're vapor." Ryan nodded grimly. "So, it wasn't random?" "No," Pierce said flatly. "Someone wanted you gone." Ryan looked down at Thor, who stared back with quiet intensity. "Not today," he murmured. Pierce's team began packing up, their truck rumbling softly as it reversed. The snow had started again, thick and heavy, muffling the sound of movement. Across the street, the cafe door opened, a wedge of warm light spilling onto the snow. Maya Collins appeared, bundled in a tan coat and scarf, her gloved hands clutching two paper cups. She moved carefully toward the barricade, her breath visible in the frigid air. "Officer McAllister?" she called softly. Ryan turned. "Maya, you need to stay inside. I just saw the trucks leave. I thought maybe—" She hesitated, her voice trembling slightly. "I brought you coffee. You look like you need it." Ryan met her halfway, taking the cup with a nod. "You shouldn't have come out. It's still not safe." She gave a faint smile. Neither is running a cafe alone at midnight, but here we are. He couldn't help but smirk despite the tension. "Fair enough." Maya's eyes drifted toward the bomb truck disappearing into the snow. "Was that really a bomb?" "Yeah," Ryan said. 15 minutes left on the clock." Her face paled. "Oh, God. I saw something earlier tonight. A silver pickup truck, no plates, parked near my cafe for almost an hour. 2 men inside just sitting there. I thought maybe they were waiting for someone." Ryan's grip on the coffee tightened slightly. "You see their faces?" "One had a scar down his cheek," she said, brow furrowing as she tried to recall. The other wore a black cap, maybe mid-30s, looked nervous. Ryan took a slow breath. "You did good remembering that. You see that truck again, you call me immediately." He handed her his card. Maya nodded. "I will." Then, softer. "You think it's connected?" "Maybe," he admitted. "But it's too soon to tell." Thor let out a low whine, pressing against Ryan's leg. He rubbed the dog's head absently. "Guess someone doesn't like me doing my job." Maya's eyes softened. "Or maybe someone doesn't like what you're close to finding." Ryan looked up, surprised by the weight in her tone. "You sound like you've seen this kind of thing before." "I used to work with police dogs," she said quietly, "back when I was training to be a vet. Before I took over the cafe, I've seen what happens when people like you get too close to something big. Just be careful." He studied her for a moment, then gave a faint nod. "I'll try." Maya offered a small smile, the kind that carried more concern than comfort, and stepped back toward her cafe. The warm light swallowed her figure as the door closed behind her. Ryan turned to Thor. "Let's call it a night." The dog barked softly in agreement. Together, they watched the last of the EOD trucks disappear into the storm, their red taillights fading into darkness. The street was quiet again, eerily peaceful, as if nothing had happened. But Ryan knew better. Somewhere out there in the white silence of Elridge, someone was watching, waiting, and for the first time in years, he felt that same chill he'd known the night his wife died. He placed a hand on Thor's back. "You did good, partner," he whispered. "Let's get you home." The German shepherd looked up at him, snowflakes clinging to his muzzle, eyes glinting under the streetlight. Somewhere in that silence between man and dog, a promise formed. They would find whoever did this. As Ryan walked away, the faint glow from the cafe's neon sign flickered in the snow, a small, trembling light in the darkness. By morning, Elridge had shed its ghostly silence. The storm had passed, leaving behind a city washed in pale sunlight and a fresh crust of snow that glittered across rooftops and streets. At the Elridge Police Headquarters, the lobby buzzed with low chatter and the smell of burnt coffee. Officer Ryan McAllister pushed open the glass door, his heavy boots squeaking against the floor, Thor trotting at his side. Inside, the fluorescent lights were harsh, reflecting off polished linoleum and tired faces. A long night had left the department stretched thin. Ryan's uniform still smelled faintly of smoke and engine oil from the bomb scene. He hadn't slept, and the shadows under his eyes told the story. He stepped into the forensics division, a wing tucked behind reinforced glass walls filled with humming equipment and evidence lockers. The lab smelled of cleaning solvent and metal. Behind a desk covered in labeled bags and microscopes stood Detective Carlin Nguyen, a forensic analyst in her late 30s. Of Vietnamese descent, Carla was known for her razor-sharp focus and unfiltered honesty. Her dark hair was tied in a tight bun, lab coat smudged with faint traces of graphite powder. "You look like hell, McAllister," she said, looking up from a monitor. "Morning to you, too," Ryan muttered, setting a file on her desk. "You got something for me?" Carla gestured toward the sealed evidence crate in the center of the room. "The bomb from last night. We pulled it apart, piece by piece." She motioned for him to follow. Timer was cheap, standard kitchen model, but the explosives, those are military grade. PETN mixed with powdered nitrate, custom stabilized for cold weather. That's not something a back-alley hobbyist cooks up. Ryan folded his arms, staring at the shattered remains inside the evidence tray. "You're saying this wasn't just a scare tactic?" "I'm saying whoever built this has training," Carla replied. "Probably ex-military or cartel. We also found something else." She tapped a metal panel where a faint black smears lined the edges. Residue tested positive for trace narcotics, methamphetamine. Ryan frowned. Drugs? Inside the bomb casing? Microscopic traces, she said. Whoever handled this device was also handling unrefined meth, the kind smuggled from Mexico across small-town routes like ours. She typed something into her terminal, the screen lighting up with a database of chemical matches. 3 major cases in the last 6 months used similar PTN batches, all tied to cartel movements between Laredo and Amarillo. Ryan's mind started connecting threads. So they're not just smuggling drugs, they're testing explosives, maybe for protection, maybe for intimidation. Or maybe both, Carla said. Either way, you're dealing with someone who doesn't want to get caught again. Before Ryan could respond, Thor gave a low growl from near the evidence crate. The shepherd's nose pressed against the sealed plastic container, sniffing intently. Carla blinked. Hey, get your dog back, McAllister, that's contaminated evidence. Ryan raised a hand. Wait. He'd seen this behavior before. Thor only reacted like this when he caught something specific. What is it, boy? The dog sniffed again, then let out a short, sharp bark, eyes fixed on the crate. Ryan knelt, brushing his hand lightly over the container. He's picking up on the narcotics, Ryan said quietly. There's more residue than your instruments can detect. Carla frowned. That mutt's better than half the machines we use. Ryan smirked faintly. That's why he's on payroll. He turned to her. Get me a list of shipments, chemical suppliers, and border crossing records for any freight trucks in the past week. Look for anything that matches this compound mix or shows dual cargo routes. Already ahead of you, Carla said, flipping a folder open. Your silver truck lead? We pulled traffic cam footage from downtown. A Southline freight pickup crossed the surveillance grid at 11:02 p.m., 5 minutes before your call came in. No plates, tinted windows, heading west toward Highway 9. Ryan's pulse quickened. Same direction those suspects ran. Carla nodded. I'll keep digging, but if this connects to the cartel, tread carefully. These aren't small-time dealers, they're logistics men. They handle product, not street trade. Ryan rubbed the bridge of his nose, which means this wasn't just retaliation, it was a message. He left the lab with the evidence folder tucked under his arm, Thor padding quietly beside him. The bullpen was busier now, phones ringing, keyboards clacking, the low hum of morning operations. Ryan's partner from patrol, Officer Mark Sutter, spotted him across the room. Mark was in his early 40s, tall, with sandy hair, and an easy grin that masked too many years of dealing with darkness. Heard about your little fireworks show last night, Mark said, leaning against the desk. You planning to make a habit of that? Not if I can help it, Ryan replied dryly. Mark glanced down at Thor. That mutt's got better instincts than half our department. You feed him psychic chow or something? Ryan cracked a small smile. He just listens better than people. He handed Mark the report. Lab confirmed cartel explosives and narcotics residue. Whoever tried to blow me up has ties south of the border. Mark whistled low. That's a hell of a reach for a quiet town like ours. Yeah, Ryan said, which means it's not random. They've got something moving through Elridge. Mark looked serious now. You talked to Henderson yet? Not yet. I need more before I take it upstairs. Be careful, Mark warned, his voice dropping. If the cartel's involved, they'll know you're onto them before you even blink. Ryan didn't reply. He simply nodded, pocketing the file. By noon, he was back in his office reviewing the footage Carla had sent to his tablet. The timestamp read 10:57 p.m., 5 minutes before the bomb call. The camera angle showed the street outside Bean Haven Cafe, its neon sign flickering faintly through the snow. Then a figure appeared, a man in a black hoodie, head down, walking briskly past the window. The camera caught a partial face beneath the hood, unshaven jaw, sharp nose, and the glint of a scar along his left cheek. He paused for a moment at the corner, glanced directly toward the cafe, then disappeared from view. Ryan froze the frame. The timestamp matched exactly to when Maya said she'd seen the silver truck. His phone buzzed on the desk. A text from Maya Collins. Check your email. I found something on my camera feed from last night. Ryan opened his inbox. Attached was a short video clip, higher resolution than the traffic cam footage. The same man, closer this time, walking under the streetlight near her cafe. The hoodie shadowed his face, but the distinctive scar was visible. He was holding something small in his hand, metallic, cylindrical. Ryan's jaw tightened. A remote detonator. He called her immediately. Maya, where did you get this? I checked my security system this morning, she said, her voice shaky but composed. It recorded everything. The guy walked by at exactly 10:55 p.m., 5 minutes before I saw the flare. I thought you should see it first. You did the right thing, Ryan said. Send me the raw file. Don't share it with anyone else. I already did, she replied. And Ryan, her voice softened. Be careful. That man, he looked right into the camera, like he knew it was there. Ryan glanced back at the frozen image on his screen. The man's gaze, even blurred and distant, seemed to stare straight through him. Thanks, Maya, he said quietly. I owe you one. After the call ended, he leaned back in his chair, the silence heavy around him. Thor, lying near his feet, lifted his head, sensing his handler's unease. Ryan reached down and scratched behind the dog's ear. Looks like we're not done yet, partner. Outside, the snow had begun to melt into gray slush along the curbs, but the chill remained. Somewhere in the quiet sprawl of Elridge, a man with a scar had walked freely into their city, carrying death in his hands. And now, thanks to one loyal dog and a woman who refused to ignore her instincts, Ryan finally had a face to hunt. The storm returned that night, swallowing Elridge in sheets of white. Snow came down hard enough to mute sirens, drown headlights, and turn the city's edges into ghosts. Officer Ryan McAllister gripped the steering wheel of his patrol SUV, the windshield wipers fighting a losing battle against the ice. Thor sat in the back seat, alert, his golden-brown eyes fixed on the dark streets ahead. The call from Carlin Gwyn had come just an hour earlier. The chemical trace from the bomb casing, PETN laced with unrefined meth residue, had matched something unusual, a shipment log from an abandoned freight company on the city's outskirts. Coordinates led to Old Harbor Storage, a row of decaying warehouses beside the frozen river. The place had been shut down for years, its gates chained and its records forgotten. Ryan had barely slept since the lab report. The image of the scarred man from Maya's video haunted his mind. Sharp jaw, calm stride, eyes that looked straight at the camera, daring someone to follow. Tonight, Ryan intended to take that dare. Snowflakes slapped across the windshield as he pulled onto a service road leading to the docks. The SUV's tires crunched through the drifted powder, headlights slicing through the storm. You ready, partner? Ryan said softly. Thor gave a low bark in reply. They reached the warehouse gates a little after 10. The chain was cut, fresh metal shavings glinting under the flashlight. Someone had been here recently. Ryan parked the SUV behind a stack of shipping containers, killed the engine, and stepped out into the biting cold. Thor followed, nose already to the ground. The dog's nostrils flared as he caught the scent. Strong, chemical, bitter. His tail stiffened. Ryan crouched, watching as Thor led him toward the far end of the lot where a silver freight truck sat idling under the broken floodlight, its exhaust clouding in the freezing air. Ryan's pulse quickened. The same make and model from Maya's footage. He moved closer, one careful step at a time, boots silent on the snow. The truck doors were shut, but faint movement showed inside the driver's cab, a shadow shifting, a glow from a phone screen. Ryan pressed a finger to his lips, signaling Thor to stay. Then, from inside the warehouse came a faint metallic clatter. Ryan froze. A second noise followed. Something heavy dropped, then hurried footsteps. Whoever was inside had heard them. "Police!" Ryan shouted, drawing his gun. "Come out with your hands where I can see them." For a moment, there was only the wind. Then, a flash. The bullet hissed past his shoulder, punching into a crate behind him. Thor barked sharply, teeth bared. "Down!" Ryan shouted, diving for cover behind a concrete pillar as more shots rang out, muffled by the storm. A figure bolted from the warehouse, a man in a heavy black parka and ski mask, sprinting toward the silver truck. Ryan fired once, deliberately low, shattering the ice near the man's boots. The suspect stumbled but kept running. Thor lunged forward before Ryan could stop him, his body a streak of tan and black against the snow. The shepherd hit the man full force, knocking him sideways into the drift. They rolled together, a tangle of fur and limbs. Ryan closed in fast, weapon raised. "Get off him, Thor!" he ordered, kneeling to cuff the suspect. The man's mask had slipped halfway off. Olive skin, dark hair, mid-30s, his eyes full of hate. He spat a curse in Spanish, jerking violently in Ryan's grip. "Who sent you?" Ryan demanded. The man's lips twisted into a cold grin. "You'll find out," he hissed, before jerking his shoulder forward, knocking into Ryan. In the same motion, he shoved a metal canister from his pocket and slammed it onto the ground. Smoke exploded around them. "Thor, back!" Ryan shouted, covering his face. The suspect bolted toward the warehouse again, vanishing into the haze. Ryan fired twice into the air but didn't pursue blindly. The smoke was thick, laced with chemical fumes. Thor coughed beside him, shaking his head. By the time the air cleared, the man was gone. Ryan scanned the lot, heart pounding. The silver truck's engine was still running, doors wide open. He approached cautiously, gun raised, but the cab was empty. Inside the trailer, however, was a different kind of nightmare. Rows of plastic bags, stacked from floor to ceiling, shimmered faintly under the flashlight. Hundreds of sealed packets of methamphetamine and fentanyl pills. Chemical drums lined the walls, and in the corner sat a wooden crate marked with a faded red stencil. RD. R Delta. Ryan frowned, brushing frost from the lid. R Delta, he murmured. He'd seen that code before, in DEA briefings, tied to a notorious smuggling network called Los Corredores, a cartel offshoot operating between Mexico and the southern states, known for mixing narcotics trade with weapons shipments. "Looks like we've just walked into their backyard," Ryan said to Thor, who was sniffing the air along the crates. The shepherd let out a soft whine and pawed at the corner of one. Ryan knelt and found a leather-bound notebook wedged between the boards. Inside, messy handwriting listed shipment codes, names, and dates. He snapped photos with his phone, flipping through until he saw a name scrawled near the top of a page. Hector Rojas, LC, Border Ops. The initials LC matched Los Corredores. A sudden groan of metal snapped his attention up. The warehouse doors creaked in the wind. Then came another sound, a faint whimper from Thor. Ryan turned quickly. The shepherd stood beside the truck, limping slightly. A red streak marred his left flank. "Damn it," Ryan muttered, dropping to his knees. The wound was shallow, likely a graze from the gunfire earlier, but it bled steadily. "Hang in there, buddy. We're getting you patched up." He called in for backup and secured the scene before rushing Thor to the nearest open clinic. The small veterinary office near Main Street glowed softly through the storm. Ryan pushed through the door, carrying the 70-pound shepherd in his arms. The bell above jingled faintly. Behind the counter, Maya Collins looked up, eyes widening. "Oh my God, Thor!" she gasped, running around to meet them. She was dressed in a thick wool sweater and jeans, her hair tied in a messy bun. "What happened?" "Gunfight," Ryan said, breathless. "He took a hit." "Lay him here," she instructed, guiding him to an exam table. Her voice shifted from alarm to calm professionalism, the remnants of her old veterinary training coming back instantly. She cleaned the wound quickly, disinfected it, and wrapped it tight with gauze. "He's lucky," Maya said softly, stroking Thor's head. "The bullet only grazed him." Ryan exhaled, tension easing. "You've done this before." "My dad used to let me help when he worked with K-9 units," she said, a flicker of sadness crossing her face. "He was a customs officer, got killed when I was 16, investigating Los Corredores." Ryan paused, looking at her. "The same name that showed up tonight." She nodded slowly. "Yeah. They move meth and guns through ghost roads, places no one checks. My dad called them the shadows that never cross daylight." Ryan watched her for a long moment, the hum of the clinic filling the silence. "You just gave me a head start," he said finally. She tied off the bandage, her hands steady despite the weight in her eyes. "Then do something with it, officer. Don't let them get away again." Ryan smiled faintly, scratching Thor's ear. "Wouldn't dream of it." As he stepped outside, the snow had eased to a gentle fall, coating the streets in pale light. The evidence sat locked in his car, the notebook, the crate, the first tangible link to the cartel. He looked down at Thor, who nudged his hand softly despite the bandage. "Looks like we found their trail," Ryan murmured. "Now, we just have to follow it." The shepherd's tail wagged once, snow glinting off the gauze on his side. Above them, thunder rumbled low across the frozen horizon, echoing like a warning. The night had settled deep over Elridge, wrapping the quiet city in its frozen breath. The streets were still slick from the storm, and the glow of the lampposts turned the snow into dull amber glass. Inside his apartment above the hardware store on Grant Avenue, Officer Ryan McAllister sat on the couch, one hand absently resting on Thor's back. The German shepherd lay stretched beside him, bandaged but calm, his rhythmic breathing the only sound in the room. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight. Ryan hadn't turned on the television, hadn't opened his case file, hadn't even touched the coffee that had gone cold on the table. His mind replayed the warehouse scene. Gunfire echoing in the storm, the suspect's eyes burning with defiance, the word R Delta seared into his memory. The room smelled faintly of antiseptic and dog shampoo. Thor had been cleaned and stitched hours ago at Maya's clinic, but the faint tang of blood still lingered. His phone buzzed on the table. Unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. At first, silence, then a low voice muffled and distorted. "You got lucky, McAllister." Ryan sat upright. "Who is this?" A small chuckle crackled through the receiver, almost playful. "You think you can walk into our house and live to brag about it? You should have burned with the others." Ryan's jaw tightened, his knuckles whitening around the phone. "If you're trying to scare me, it's not working." The voice paused, then spoke slowly, venomously. "You escaped once, officer, but next time your dog won't be fast enough." The line went dead. Ryan stared at the phone screen for a long moment, the reflection of the city lights flickering across his face. His pulse thudded in his ears, but outwardly he was still. Only Thor noticed the change. The dog lifted his head, eyes narrowing, a soft growl vibrating in his chest. Ryan exhaled slowly, setting the phone down. "They're watching us, buddy." Thor tilted his head, as if in understanding, then rested it back on Ryan's leg. The warmth of the dog's weight steadied him, grounding him against the tide of memories that began to rise. For the first time in months, the wall of control he'd built cracked. The voice on the phone had used the same tone, the same mocking cadence as the one that haunted his dreams, the one that had whispered boom before his world turned to fire. He saw it again, his wife Clara, laughing as she reached for her car keys that morning. The explosion a minute later. The heat, the smoke, the screams. He'd been too late then. He couldn't afford to be too late now. Thor shifted closer, pressing against his side. Ryan stroked his head absently, whispering, "Not again. Never again." When dawn crept through the frosted windows, the storm had passed. The world outside looked untouched, pure, silent, deceptive. Ryan's phone buzzed again, this time with an alert from the precinct. Evidence transfer. Complete. Bomb fragments en route to federal lab in Dallas. He was about to reply when Thor suddenly rose to his feet, ears pricked. "What is it?" Ryan asked, watching the shepherd move to the door. The dog sniffed the air, then let out a single bark. Ryan frowned. He followed Thor down the stairwell into the garage. The air was cold and sharp, filled with the scent of snow and motor oil. Thor circled the patrol SUV, sniffing along the tires and undercarriage. Then he stopped at the rear bumper, pawing at the metal. A low growl rumbled from his throat. Ryan knelt down, heart tightening. He pulled his flashlight from his belt, crouched lower, and there, wedged just beneath the frame, was a small black device no larger than a matchbox. Antenna, LED indicator, blinking faintly green, a GPS tracker. Ryan cursed softly. So they're not just threatening, they're watching. He pulled a pocket knife and carefully pried the device loose, holding it under the light. "Military-grade tracker," he muttered. "Short-range transmission. Someone nearby's monitoring movement." He straightened, scanning the street beyond the frosted window. Empty. But emptiness could lie. He dropped the tracker into a metal evidence tin and sealed it shut. "Good catch, partner," he said quietly. Thor wagged his tail once, but his body stayed rigid, alert. Ryan spent the rest of the morning combing through call logs, tracing the number from the previous night, but whoever had called had used a cloned SIM. No trace, no origin. It was the kind of precision that came with money and organization, not random threats. By afternoon, the streets were busier again. Snowplows cleared the intersections, and the hum of life returned to downtown Elridge. Ryan parked across from Bean Haven Cafe, waiting for Maya's update about the footage she'd been analyzing. Inside, Maya moved between tables, wiping counters while her laptop played silent CCTV clips on the bar. When she looked up and saw him through the window, she waved him in. He stepped inside, the warm scent of coffee cutting through the cold. Maya set a mug in front of him before he even spoke. "You look worse than last night," she said softly. "No sleep?" He shook his head. "Not much. Had some company, an anonymous one." Her brows furrowed. "Threats?" "More like promises. Ryan replied, taking a sip. They called just after midnight. Said next time I won't walk away. Maya's face went pale. Ryan. He raised a hand. It's fine. They won't get that chance. Before she could respond, Thor, lying near the door, lifted his head and gave a low bark. Maya turned toward the window, frowning. That's the second time he's done that today, she said. Ryan followed her gaze. Across the street, a dark sedan sat idling in the shade of a lamppost. The driver was barely visible behind the tinted glass. He's been there since noon, Maya whispered. Didn't buy anything, didn't move, just sitting there watching. Ryan's eyes narrowed. You're sure? I thought maybe he was waiting for someone, but after 2 hours, no movement. And now that you're here... Ryan rose, motioning for her to stay back. Stay inside and lock the door behind me. He stepped out into the snow, his boots crunching softly as he approached the sedan. His hand rested near his holster, not drawing, just ready. The car engine purred quietly. When he was close enough to see through the windshield, the driver turned his head slightly. A man in his late 20s, clean-shaven, wearing a black windbreaker and gloves. His expression was blank, unreadable. Ryan rapped on the glass once. Elridge Police. Roll down your window. The man did not move. Ryan tried the handle. Locked. He took a small flashlight from his jacket and shone it inside. The passenger seat was empty, but on the dashboard a mounted receiver blinked green in sync with the tracker Thor had found earlier. Got you, Ryan muttered. He stepped back and reached for his radio. Dispatch, I've got a possible surveillance vehicle on 3rd and Main. License 9FG. But before he could finish, the sedan's engine roared. The tires screeched, throwing snow, and the car bolted down the street. Damn it! Ryan sprinted toward his SUV, Thor already leaping into the back seat. He turned the ignition and floored it, the patrol lights bursting to life in red and blue. The sedan weaved through traffic, heading south toward the highway. Ryan stayed close, calling in pursuit, but within minutes the car took a sharp turn into an underpass. By the time he emerged from the curve, it was gone. He slammed the steering wheel, frustration flashing across his face. They're always one step ahead. Thor barked once as if to remind him they'd closed the gap before, and would again. Ryan exhaled, the adrenaline fading into focus. You're right, partner. We'll find them. That night, back at the station, he logged the tracker into evidence and filed the official report. The entry on the board read simply, unknown caller, tracker device, possible cartel surveillance. But to Ryan, it meant something much deeper. Proof that Los Corredores had eyes everywhere. Outside the precinct, the wind howled again, carrying the faint echo of the voice that had called him. Next time, your dog won't be fast enough. Ryan looked down at Thor, who stood patiently beside him, tail wagging softly in the cold. We'll see about that, he murmured. They picked the wrong partners to follow. Thor nudged his hand with his nose, a silent vow in return. By dawn, the storm had cleared, leaving Elridge painted in dull silver beneath a pale sky. The snow had hardened overnight, forming a crust that cracked under every step. Officer Ryan McAllister leaned against his SUV, the cold biting through his gloves as Thor sniffed methodically along the street where the dark sedan had disappeared the night before. The shepherd's breath misted in the morning air, his paws pressing faint prints into the snow. The tracker they'd found under the car had been analyzed overnight. The tech division reported that the signal wasn't random. It was pinging coordinates from a freight hub 2 miles from the southern state line, near a row of storage containers often used by import companies. Ryan had seen enough of these import companies to know what that really meant, a cover for cartel operations. He opened the passenger door, letting Thor jump inside. Let's see where your nose takes us, partner. The drive south was quiet, the radio murmuring static. Fields of frost stretched across the horizon, broken only by the jagged silhouette of container stacks and old cranes. The air smelled of salt and diesel, the scent of goods and secrets moving in and out of the country. When they arrived, the Elridge Freight Terminal was almost deserted. Only a handful of trucks idled near the security shack, their drivers sipping coffee and stamping their feet for warmth. Ryan flashed his badge and nodded to the guard, a young man in his 20s wearing a heavy brown parka and a cap pulled low. Morning, officer, the guard said nervously. Didn't expect company this early. Routine check, Ryan replied. Got reports of unregistered containers. The guard shrugged. Wouldn't surprise me. Half the stuff here's been sitting for months. Ryan gave a brief nod, then turned to Thor. Find it. The German shepherd lowered his head, nose close to the frozen ground, weaving between rows of stacked containers. His tail stiffened as he stopped near a blue unit marked Delta Corp Logistics. The scent trail ended there. Ryan climbed the metal latch, pried open the container's lock, and swung the doors wide. The smell hit him first, a sharp tang of acetone and fertilizer. Inside, under a tarp, were crates filled with industrial chemicals, ammonium nitrate, wires, batteries, and timing circuits, the same materials Carla had listed in her bomb analysis. "Damn," Ryan muttered. "They're not done." He pulled the tarp aside further and froze. On the back wall, pinned under a magnet, was a map of Elridge Airport, detailed with flight paths and restricted zones marked in red ink. Scrawled at the corner, Phase 2, Runway Access 11A. Thor let out a low growl and pawed at another crate. Ryan opened it and found forged pilot IDs, flight clearance badges, and uniforms stitched with Aero Global Freight. Each one had a different name, but the faces were all the same. Printed duplicates of a single man, the scarred man from Maya's footage. Ryan's blood went cold. "They're planning something at the airport," he whispered. He immediately called the precinct. "This is McAllister, badge 2147. I need the DEA field office looped in now. Possible cartel explosives operation tied to airport logistics." The dispatcher's voice crackled. "Copy that. DEA en route." Within an hour, 2 DEA agents arrived in an unmarked SUV. The lead investigator, Agent David Holt, stepped out first, mid-40s, white, square-jawed with close-cropped graying hair and the kind of steady composure that came from years of high-risk operations. He wore a navy windbreaker with DEA stitched across the chest and dark gloves gripping a thermos of coffee. "McAllister," Holt greeted, offering a handshake. "Heard you stirred up a hornet's nest." Ryan nodded grimly. "Found their next move. They're disguising themselves as freight pilots. Looks like they were prepping to transport meth and explosives through Elridge Airport." Holt examined the IDs and map with a practiced eye. "Yeah, that's Vargas's style." "Vargas?" "Ricardo Vargas," Holt said, "leader of Los Corredores, former mechanic turned smuggler, runs his operation like an airline, trucks, planes, even shipping containers. The DEA's been after him for 5 years. Every time we close in, he disappears into Mexico." Ryan clenched his jaw. "Well, looks like he's resurfaced here." Holt nodded slowly. "And if he's testing explosives again, it means he's escalating. Probably wants leverage, scare tactics for border control." Ryan looked at the chemicals. "You think he's planning an attack?" Holt's expression hardened. "If Vargas is desperate enough, he won't care who gets caught in the blast." Before they could continue, Thor barked sharply, tail pointing toward the far end of the yard. Ryan turned. A figure was running between the containers, slipping through the maze of steel corridors. "Stop! Police!" Ryan shouted, breaking into a sprint. The man darted behind a storage unit, knocking over a drum. Ryan rounded the corner. Empty. Only boot prints leading toward a fence. He fired one warning shot into the air, but by the time he reached the boundary, the runner was gone, tracks vanishing into the open field beyond. Back at the site, Holt radioed his team. "We'll cordon this area and sweep for prints. You did good finding this, McAllister." Ryan gave a short nod, though unease gnawed at him. Whoever that runner was, he had been guarding something, and he'd escaped too easily. That evening, back in town, Ryan sat in his office going over the case files when his phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from Maya Collins. "Someone's been watching my cafe again. Same black sedan, different driver, and I just got a message. You need to see this." Ryan frowned. "What message?" he typed back. A moment later, a photo appeared. A text sent from an unknown number. "You're a pretty girl, Miss Collins, but you should stop sticking your nose in Mexican men's business." Ryan's stomach tightened. He grabbed his coat and keys. When he arrived at the cafe, the lights were dim, and Maya sat behind the counter, pale but composed. She showed him the phone screen again, her hands trembling slightly. "It came just after I closed," she said quietly. "They know who I am." Ryan looked at her. Mid-30s, strong-willed, trying to hide fear behind determination. Her sweater sleeves were rolled up, and there was flour on her hands from baking, like she'd tried to distract herself from the dread. He exhaled slowly. "You're coming with me tonight. I'll take you somewhere safe." "I can't leave the cafe," she protested weakly. "This place is everything I have left." "Your life is worth more." Ryan said firmly. "If they're watching you, they'll use you to get to me." Her eyes softened, the resistance fading. "Where will we go?" "There's an officer safe house on the north side. Unlisted, secure line. You'll stay there until we get Vargas." As they packed a small overnight bag, Thor stood guard near the window, his ears twitching at every sound outside. When Ryan placed a reassuring hand on Maya's shoulder, she finally exhaled, her voice barely a whisper. "You really think we can stop them?" Ryan gave a small, tired smile. "We've stopped worse." She looked at him then, seeing something beyond the uniform, the quiet exhaustion of a man who had lost everything once and was now willing to lose nothing more. "Thank you, Ryan," she said softly. "Don't thank me yet," he replied. "We're just getting started." As they stepped into the night, snowflakes began to fall again, silent and thin, like the breath of something waiting. Somewhere near the border, Ricardo Vargas was moving his pieces across the board, unaware that one determined cop and one loyal canine had just found his trail. The first drops began to fall just after dusk, cold, heavy rain that turned the snow in Elridge into slush and made the streets hiss like restless serpents. Officer Ryan McAllister stood beside his SUV in the police staging area, rain sliding down the brim of his hood. Around him, the Elridge Special Response Team loaded gear into armored trucks. The radio crackled with nervous chatter, and Thor sat obediently by his leg, ears twitching at the sharp sound of metal and static. The call had come an hour earlier from Agent David Holt of the DEA. A credible informant, one of Vargas's couriers turned snitch, had tipped them off. Ricardo Vargas was planning a late-night meeting with his lieutenants at the South Lot, a sprawling, half-abandoned truck yard near the industrial district. The rain made it the perfect cover. Ryan adjusted the strap on his bulletproof vest and glanced toward Holt, who was briefing the team. "We go in silent. Vargas doesn't do small meets. He's moving product or tying loose ends. Either way, we catch him, we cut the head off the snake." Holt was a man who'd seen too much. Late 40s, worn but steady, his gray hair plastered to his forehead beneath his tactical cap. His tone was calm, but Ryan caught the flicker of unease in his eyes. Cartel operations rarely went as planned. Ryan crouched beside Thor, resting a gloved hand on the shepherd's neck. "Stay sharp, boy. We end this clean." The convoy rolled out in silence. By the time they reached the South Lot, the rain had thickened into a curtain. Puddles shimmered under the harsh beam of sodium lights. Dozens of rusted trailers and abandoned rigs sat like ghosts across the flooded ground. "Positions," Holt ordered. Ryan and Thor moved along the east perimeter, their boots sinking into mud and water. The sound of the rain muffled everything, even their breathing. Ahead, faint headlights flickered, bouncing off a metal fence. Two vehicles sat idling, a black SUV and a white pickup. Ryan motioned to Holt through his comms. "Eyes on two hostiles, no visual on Vargas." Holt's voice replied through the static. "Copy. Wait for my signal." But then Thor stopped. The dog's body stiffened, nose lifting, tail low. He sniffed the air, then growled, deep and uneasy. Ryan frowned. "What is it?" Thor turned toward a storm drain running beneath the lot, barking once, sharp and urgent. Ryan moved closer, crouching beside the grate. Through the rising water he caught a faint glint. A small metal casing. His stomach tightened. "Everyone hold!" Ryan shouted over the radio. "We've got a possible explosive device under the surface." Holt's voice snapped through the comm. "EOD team, move!" Two bomb technicians rushed forward, their heavy protective suits making them look like gray shadows in the rain. One knelt by the drain, shining a light through the grate. "Confirmed device," the tech called out. "Homemade pressure detonator, water-resistant shell. It's tied to a vibration sensor. You step too close, it pops." The words sent a chill through Ryan's veins. "How many?" The tech checked his reader. "At least 3 along this drain line, maybe more. Someone wanted to turn this whole place into a crater." Thor growled again, pacing between Ryan and the grate as if to push him back. The rain hammered harder, streaking down their faces. Holt signaled the rest of the team to pull back. "Get everyone clear of the east side, now!" The EOD team worked fast, prying open the grate, hands steady despite the storm. Sweat and rain mingled on their faces as they cut the wires one by one. Then, finally, click. The bomb leader exhaled loudly. "Detonator neutralized. All sensors disabled." "Good work," Ryan said, clapping him on the shoulder. But Thor wasn't done. The shepherd whipped his head toward the far side of the lot, barking furiously. Ryan followed his gaze. A black SUV had just started up, headlights flaring through the sheets of rain. It spun in the mud and began tearing out of the lot. "Vehicle fleeing west," Ryan shouted. "All units pursue." He sprinted to his SUV, Thor leaping into the passenger seat before the door even closed. The wipers barely kept up as they roared after the fleeing vehicle, red and blue lights reflecting wildly in the rain. "Plate number N5R239, Ryan reported, squinting through the downpour. "Get me a trace." Holt's voice came through faintly. "Got it. Local registry shows it belongs to Mesa Ridge Farm, abandoned property 15 miles south, right on the border." Ryan's gut twisted. That can't be a coincidence. The SUV ahead skidded around a bend, splashing water into the air. Ryan followed, but by the time they reached the highway junction, the black vehicle was gone, lost in the dark stretch leading toward the desert. Back at the lot, the bomb team finished sweeping the area. The explosives were primitive but effective, each wired to trigger through motion. Ryan examined one of the diffused shells. Inside the casing, he spotted something unusual, a tiny metal chip engraved with the letter V. He turned it over in his palm. V for Vargas. By the time they returned to headquarters, dawn was breaking again, gray light spilling through the blinds. Ryan dropped his soaked jacket on the rack and poured coffee into a paper cup. Thor lay at his feet, tail thumping softly. Agent Holt stepped in, equally drenched but composed. "We found prints on the bomb casings," he said. "Partial match to one of Vargas's men. Name's Julio Ortiz, explosives specialist. He's on the DEA watch list. Probably the one who set the trap." Ryan nodded. "Then we know Vargas was here, or close." "Close enough to bait you," Holt said grimly. "He wanted to see how fast you'd respond. You just passed his test." Ryan rubbed his temples, exhaustion creeping in. "The next time, he won't test. He'll strike." "Which is why we're striking first," Holt replied. "Mesa Ridge Farm. If that plate's registered there, we move before nightfall." Ryan gave a small nod. "Understood." He left the office to clear his head, the rain outside turning to drizzle. As he stepped under the awning, his phone buzzed. A message from Maya Collins. "I finished analyzing the traffic cam data from last night. You were right. That SUV came from the south lot 15 minutes before the bomb call. It stopped for exactly 90 seconds at a gas station near Highway 22. Sending coordinates now." Ryan smiled faintly. Even from the safe house, Maya was still working the case. Her courage reminded him of why he couldn't give up, and why this fight was no longer just about justice. He texted back, "You shouldn't be doing this. It's dangerous." She replied almost instantly, "So is keeping quiet." Ryan slipped his phone into his pocket, glancing at Thor, who lifted his head expectantly. "Looks like we've got a new lead, buddy." The dog barked once, tail swishing lightly against the wet pavement. The sound carried faintly through the mist, a promise echoing in the empty street. They were getting closer, one step at a time. The desert wind carried the scent of dust and rain over Mesa Ridge Farm, a cluster of half-collapsed barns and rusted silos standing alone against the moonlit horizon. It was close to midnight. The sky was a dull slate gray, and thunder rolled faintly in the distance, the kind that warned of another coming storm. Officer Ryan McAllister crouched behind an old tractor on the northern ridge, binoculars pressed to his eyes. Through the shattered windows of the farmhouse he could see movement. Several men in dark jackets stacking crates under hanging light bulbs. From this distance, the labels were clear. Fertilizer, solvents, wiring kits. He lowered the binoculars, his voice steady through the earpiece. "Visual confirmed. They're prepping both shipments, narcotics and explosives." Beside him, Agent David Holt crouched low, adjusting the suppressor on his rifle. The veteran DEA officer's weathered face gleamed with sweat despite the cold. "That's Vargas in the red flannel," he muttered, spotting the broad-shouldered man near the back wall. "No mistake. That scar on his neck, he's our guy." Ryan's heart quickened. After weeks of chasing ghosts through snow, warehouses, and dead ends, they finally had him. "Copy that," Ryan said into his mic. "Teams Alpha and Bravo, move on my signal." Thor, pressed close to Ryan's leg, was still, too still, his muscles coiled, eyes locked on the farmhouse. The shepherd's breath steamed in the frigid air, every instinct on alert. The team waited as the wind grew stronger, rattling the tin roof and masking their footsteps. Then Holt gave the silent nod. They moved in. Within seconds, flashlights cut through the dark. "DEA! Hands where we can see them!" Holt's voice roared through the loudspeaker. Chaos erupted. Vargas's men scrambled for weapons, shouting orders in Spanish. Shots cracked in the night, echoing off the barn walls. Ryan ducked behind a truck bed, returning fire. "Keep them away from the east wall," he yelled. "There's a fuel line." Thor bolted from cover, weaving through the hail of bullets, barking sharply as he lunged at a gunman trying to flank them. The man went down screaming, his rifle skidding across the dirt. Holt's voice rang through the comms again. "We've got movement near the generator. They're trying to light the charge." Ryan turned just in time to see Ricardo Vargas, tall, stocky, mid-40s, his dark hair slicked back, wearing a red flannel shirt and combat boots, dragging a metal case across the floor. In his left hand, a remote detonator glinted under the flickering lights. "Drop it!" Ryan shouted. Vargas sneered. "You think you can stop this, gringo? You'll burn with us." His thumb pressed down. Thor sprang like lightning, jaws clamping around Vargas's arm. The detonator flew from his hand, clattering across the concrete floor. The cartel leader screamed, swinging his elbow into Thor's side, but the shepherd held firm. Ryan charged forward, knocking Vargas down. The detonator skidded toward the fuel drums, seconds before a young DEA tech dove and kicked it away. Then, a gunshot. Ryan froze. Thor stumbled sideways, a red streak spreading across his shoulder. The shepherd whined, collapsing near the doorway. "Thor!" Ryan shouted, heart slamming against his ribs. He spotted the shooter, a wiry man in a leather jacket, mid-30s, tattoos crawling up his neck, raising his gun again. Ryan didn't hesitate. One shot rang out, precise and final. The man crumpled instantly. He sprinted to Thor's side, kneeling in the dirt. The shepherd's breathing was shallow but steady. "Stay with me, buddy. You're okay," Ryan whispered, pressing his hand to the wound. The bullet had grazed the shoulder, painful, but not fatal. Around them, the firefight began to die down. The last of Vargas's men were forced to the ground, disarmed and cuffed. Holt's voice came through the static. "Suspects contained. Site secured. Get medics up here." Ryan looked up just as two agents wrestled Vargas to his knees. The cartel leader glared through his bloodied face, spitting toward Ryan. "You think this changes anything? There's always another me." Ryan stood, breathing hard, his gun steady. "Maybe, but not tonight." He turned away as Holt ordered Vargas hauled into the armored truck. Minutes later, paramedics arrived. Among them, Dr. Karen Lowell, a field vet contracted by the department, a woman in her 50s with silver hair tied back and a calm, professional voice. She knelt beside Thor, cutting away the matted fur around the wound. "Through and through," she murmured. "He's lucky. Another inch and it'd have clipped the artery." Ryan's throat tightened. "He saved all of us." Dr. Lowell smiled faintly. "They always do." Thor was sedated and lifted carefully into the back of the medical van. Ryan climbed in beside him, still covered in dust and blood. The drive to the veterinary hospital felt endless, the rhythmic thrum of the engine matching the pounding in his chest. When they arrived, the emergency lights reflected off wet pavement. Rain had started again, softer this time, like the world itself was exhaling. The vet team rushed Thor inside while Ryan stood in the doorway, soaked and exhausted. A familiar voice called from behind. "Ryan!" He turned. Maya Collins was there, breathless, her hair pulled into a messy bun, rain dripping from her coat. She had left the safe house the moment she heard the radio report. She hurried to him, eyes wide. "Is he?" "He's alive," Ryan said hoarsely. "Took a bullet protecting me." Maya pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. For a moment she said nothing. Then her eyes filled with tears she could no longer hide. "He's more than just a dog, Ryan. He's part of you." Ryan swallowed. Hard, looking through the glass as the vets worked over Thor. Machines beeped steadily. "Yeah," he whispered. "He's my partner. My only family left." Maya stood beside him, their shoulders almost touching. "You're not alone anymore," she said quietly. "Not if you don't want to be." He looked at her, truly looked, and something in his expression softened. The exhaustion, the grief, the years of solitude seemed to ease for the first time. "Thank you," he murmured. Inside, the vet gave a thumbs up. "Stable," she called. "He's going to make it." Ryan exhaled, his knees nearly giving way. Maya caught his arm, steadying him. "Told you," she said with a small smile through her tears. "Miracles still happen." As dawn broke over Elridge, the storm clouds began to part. Vargas and his men were in custody, the bomb ring dismantled, and Thor, battered, scarred, but alive, would heal. Ryan looked once more through the window at his partner, whispering, "Good boy, Thor. You did it." The shepherd stirred slightly, tail giving one slow, tired wag. Outside, the rain faded into silence. The city breathed again. The last snow of the season had melted into the gutters of Elridge, leaving behind slick cobblestones and a faint smell of rain in the cold morning air. For the first time in months, the city breathed easily again. The headlines had changed. Drug network dismantled in cross-border operation. Officer McAllister and Canine Thor honored for bravery. Standing in front of the precinct, Officer Ryan McAllister watched as the flag rose slowly against the pale sky. He had exchanged his worn tactical jacket for a new Navy uniform, crisp and clean, with a silver badge that gleamed faintly under the soft sunlight. The nameplate now carried a new title beneath it: K9 Unit Captain. Thor sat beside him, his shoulder wrapped in light bandages but his posture proud and alert. The shepherd had healed faster than anyone expected, though the scar on his fur remained like a medal of its own. "Ready to get back to work, partner?" Ryan asked quietly. Thor gave a soft, approving bark, tail sweeping the steps. A familiar voice came from behind. "The city owes you both more than a medal, Captain." Ryan turned to see Agent David Holt approaching, his trench coat draped over one arm. The veteran DEA agent looked tired but lighter, as if the weight of years had lifted a little. "You did good out there," Holt continued. "Vargas is facing federal charges in 2 states. The department's sending commendations for your whole team." Ryan gave a modest nod. "Couldn't have done it without your help." Holt smirked. "You're too modest. Just promise me one thing. Take some time off before the next crisis." Ryan chuckled under his breath. "I'll try." As Holt left, Ryan looked across the quiet street. The storm, the sirens, the endless pursuit, all seemed like a distant echo now. The world, at least for this moment, had turned gentle again. Later that afternoon, Ryan drove to the Elm Street Community Hall, where a banner read "Charity Gala for Children Affected by Crime." Inside, the scent of coffee, candle wax, and cinnamon filled the air. Fairy lights hung from the ceiling, casting a warm, amber glow. He hadn't planned on coming. Crowds still made him uneasy. But the handwritten invitation on his desk that morning, signed by Maya Collins, had felt impossible to ignore. When he stepped inside, he spotted her near the small stage, speaking to a group of volunteers. She looked different tonight. Her usual cafe apron replaced by a pale blue dress, simple but graceful. Her auburn hair, loosely pinned, shimmered under the lights. When she turned and saw him, her eyes brightened with a warmth that cut through every wall he had left. "Ryan," she greeted, smiling softly. "You actually came." "You invited me," he said with a faint smile. "I figured it would be rude not to." She laughed gently. "I didn't think you'd leave Thor." "He's in the car," Ryan replied, glancing out the window. "Sulking, because he wasn't allowed inside." "That makes 2 of us," Maya teased lightly. A hush fell over the crowd as she was called to the stage. She looked momentarily nervous, then caught Ryan's gaze and seemed to draw strength from it. When she began speaking, her voice was steady but filled with emotion. "I started this foundation," she said, "for children who lost their parents to crime, like I did. My father was a customs officer who never came home from his last case. For years, I stopped believing in justice. I thought the world didn't care. But then, one winter night, I saw a police car's lights through the snow, and a man who refused to give up, even when death was seconds away. That night, Officer Ryan McAllister and his canine partner Thor reminded me that courage still exists, that good still fights back even in the coldest places." Her voice broke slightly. "And it made me believe again." The audience applauded softly. Ryan stood at the back, heart pounding with a mix of pride and something deeper, something he couldn't quite name. When the event ended, he found her outside beneath the twinkling streetlights. The night was cool, the air carrying the faint scent of thawed earth and rain-soaked pine. "You didn't tell me you were speaking tonight," he said. She shrugged lightly, smiling. "I didn't want you to run." "I might have," he admitted. "But I'm glad I didn't." For a moment, silence settled between them, not uncomfortable but charged with quiet understanding. Then Ryan reached into his pocket. "I was going to wait," he said. "But I think this belongs to you." He handed her a small velvet box. Inside, nestled against the lining, was a delicate silver necklace with a simple charm engraved with the words, "Courage is silent, like a dog's love." Maya looked up, eyes glistening. "Ryan, this is beautiful." He smiled faintly. "It's something my wife used to say. About Thor. About the kind of love that doesn't ask for anything. Just stays." She traced the engraving with her thumb, voice barely above a whisper. "I think she'd be proud you still carry that kind of love." Ryan swallowed hard, the lump in his throat almost too heavy. Maybe, but tonight it feels like it's changing, becoming something new. A soft bark interrupted them. Thor stood by the open car door, tail wagging expectantly, as if approving the moment. Maya laughed through her tears. "Looks like someone's impatient." Ryan chuckled. "Yeah, he's not good at subtlety." She leaned closer, fastening the necklace around her neck. "Then don't be either." For a brief moment, they stood there, the wind cool against their faces, the streetlights glimmering like distant stars. And Ryan felt something lift inside him, not the thrill of victory or the relief of survival, but peace, the kind he hadn't felt since before the explosion that took everything from him. Thor barked once more, his deep voice echoing into the night. Ryan placed a hand on Maya's shoulder, meeting her gaze. "Thank you," he said softly, "for reminding me there's still something worth coming home to." She smiled, eyes shining. "No, Ryan, thank you for giving me back my faith." As they walked toward the car, Thor nudged open the door with his nose, letting out a huff that sounded suspiciously like approval. Maya laughed, resting a hand on his head. "You're the real hero, aren't you?" The shepherd's tail swept the ground as Ryan looked on, the corners of his mouth curving upward. The night around them was quiet, the storm long gone. For the first time in what felt like forever, Elridge didn't feel like a city of ghosts. It felt like home. 3 months later, the long winter finally loosened its grip on Elridge. The last traces of snow clung stubbornly to the edges of the sidewalks, but the morning sun, pale and golden, promised spring. For the first time in years, the city square was alive with laughter, music, and flags fluttering in the mild wind. At the heart of the square, a small stage had been erected beneath the banner. Ceremony of Valor, honoring those who served beyond the call. Rows of folding chairs were filled with officers, families, and townsfolk who had followed every headline of the Vargas case. The scars left by the winter raids were fading, but the memory of what had been risked, and what had been saved, lingered like breath on cold glass. Officer Ryan McAllister, now wearing the insignia of Captain of the Elridge K-9 Division, stood behind the podium. The dark blue of his dress uniform caught the morning light, the medals on his chest gleaming faintly. His face, lean and resolute, carried a calm that came only from surviving storms too fierce to name. Beside him stood Thor, his sable and black coat brushed to a shine, a ceremonial harness around his chest bearing the gold emblem K9. Hero of the nation. The shepherd's ears twitched as the crowd hushed, his tail wagging slightly at the sound of children laughing near the front row. Ryan adjusted the microphone, the soft hum of feedback filling the crisp air. 3 months ago, he began, our city was drowning in silence, the kind that follows fear. We didn't know if we'd ever feel safe again, but standing here today, I realize something. Sometimes the thing that saves the world isn't a weapon, or even a man's strength, but a bark, at the right moment. A ripple of quiet laughter and applause spread through the audience. Ryan's eyes softened as he glanced down at Thor. This partner of mine has done more for justice than any headline can ever capture. He reminded me, and maybe all of us, that courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it walks beside you, silent and loyal, waiting for the moment you need it most. From the front row, Maya Collins watched, tears glimmering but refusing to fall. She wore a cream-colored coat over a soft lavender dress, simple yet radiant under the spring light. Her auburn hair framed her face, and though her smile trembled, it was one of pride, not sorrow. When Ryan finished, the mayor, a balding man in his 50s named Robert Alden, dressed in a charcoal suit with a red tie, stepped forward. "Officer McAllister," he said, his voice carrying through the crowd, "on behalf of the people of Elridge and the entire K-9 Division nationwide, we award you and your partner Thor the Medal of Valor for extraordinary courage, service, and sacrifice." He placed the medal ribbon around Ryan's neck, then gently fastened a matching medallion to Thor's harness. Cameras flashed, applause erupted, and Thor barked once, a deep, commanding sound that echoed across the plaza and drew laughter from the crowd. Ryan leaned down and whispered, "You just made my speech a lot better, buddy." After the ceremony, Ryan stepped down from the stage, shaking hands with fellow officers and townspeople. Agent David Holt approached, looking more rested than Ryan had ever seen him. His suit was neatly pressed, his expression proud. "I told you to take a break," Holt said, shaking his head. "Didn't think you'd turn it into a movement." Ryan smiled. "You mean the new project?" "Yeah," Holt replied. "The Elridge Rescue K-9 Training Center. Heard you've got half the county signing up already." Ryan chuckled. "We're starting small. Civilian training, search and rescue certification, therapy dog programs. Thor gets to be the face of it." Holt gave Thor a friendly pat. "He's earned it." Then, glancing toward Maya, who stood by the fountain surrounded by children petting a young police pup, he added quietly, "Looks like you finally found your reason to stay." Ryan's smile deepened. "Yeah, I did." By noon, the crowd began to disperse, leaving the square dappled in light and the faint strains of a brass band fading in the distance. Ryan found Maya near the edge of the square, handing out flyers for the new Canine Center. Her laughter mixed with the chatter of kids and the bark of puppies chasing bubbles in the air. When she saw him, she waved. "Captain McAllister," she teased, "you planning to start giving autographs now?" "Only if Thor gets one too," he said, smiling. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "He's already the star." "He always was," Ryan admitted. For a moment they simply stood there, the wind teasing at their clothes, the sunlight catching in her eyes. The chaos of months past, the bombs, the fear, the sleepless nights, felt like another lifetime. "Come on," Maya said softly, nodding toward the path that led down to the riverbank. "Let's give the hero some room to run." The three of them walked along the quiet riverside, where mist still curled low over the thawing water. The snowmelt carried the scent of pine and soil, the earth reclaiming itself after the long freeze. Thor bounded ahead, splashing through shallow puddles, barking joyfully at ducks that skimmed across the surface. His movements were lighter now, the wound on his shoulder healed to a faint scar that shimmered in the light. Ryan and Maya followed more slowly. Their hands brushed once, then again, until finally, without a word, he took hers. It wasn't dramatic. No fireworks, no grand confession. Just the warmth of two people who had already said everything they needed to through shared danger, small kindnesses, and the quiet understanding that some bonds don't need to be spoken to be real. As they reached the bend in the path, the sun broke through the clouds completely, painting the river in gold. Thor paused, turning back toward them, tail wagging furiously. Then he barked, once, twice, loud and clear, his voice echoing over the water like a declaration. Ryan laughed, the sound free and unguarded. "He approves," he said. Maya smiled through the tears she hadn't even realized were forming. "I think he's saying it's time to start living again." Ryan looked at her, then at the horizon, where light met water. "Yeah," he said softly, "I think so too." They stood there as the morning spread across Elridge, a city once haunted by sirens, now alive with laughter, sunlight, and the sound of one German shepherd's bark echoing like a hymn to second chances. Behind them, the banners fluttered in the breeze, bearing the new emblem of the Elridge Canine Rescue Center, a silver paw imprinted over a rising sun. Ryan tightened his grip on Maya's hand as Thor bounded back, nudging their legs and wagging his tail. "Let's go home," he said quietly, and for the first time in years, he truly meant it. Sometimes, God sends his angels not with wings, but with four paws and a loyal heart. Thor wasn't just a police dog. He was a reminder that miracles often come in the quiet moments of courage, in the loyalty that asks for nothing in return, and in the love that protects without hesitation. Through him, Ryan rediscovered faith, and Maya found hope again. In our daily lives, we may not all fight criminals or stand in the line of danger, but each of us can live with the same spirit, to be brave when others need us, to listen when the world goes silent, and to love with the patience of a faithful companion. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who still believes in kindness, in courage, and in the miracles that walk beside us every day. Leave a comment below, tell us what you believe about faith and loyalty, and type Amen if you too pray for a world protected by love as pure as Thor's. May God bless you, guide you through the storms, and remind you, Even in the darkest night, there's always a light waiting before dawn.